So let's talk about the movie Captain Marvel. I just saw it. It was on the verge of terrible. It started off okay. I thought Brie Larson as Captain Marvel was a little stiff, especially in the beginning, but I could see how that could be excusable because she was playing an alien who had lost, or an actual human who had lost her memory and thought she was an alien, and so acting like a Kree alien might make her less emotional or less. But they talked about you have to control your emotions. You have to control your emotions, and it was a running theme, especially in the very beginning and even toward the end. But even when in the beginning when she was angry, I didn't feel anger coming from her. Um, but I was willing to excuse that. I was willing to believe that, well, because she was a human who had been brainwashed, I guess if you would say, to think she was an alien Kree. I was willing to excuse that. But as the movie went on, I have to ask myself, is the person that wrote that movie a comic book fan? Have they ever read any of the comic books about the conflicts between, say, the Avengers or the Fantastic Four, who aren't, I'll be honest, they aren't in the MCU yet, or the X-Men, or any of the other superhero teams that have had a run-in with the Skrulls? Is there one version at all, where they are the victims, where they are the put upon good guys who are just blamed for all the troubles in the universe? No, there's not. There's not one version. There's not, at any given point in time of any era of the Marvel comic books, going back to the 60s up to right now, the Krees are bad guys and the Skrulls are bad guys. The Kree-Skrull War started because they were both empires that ended up running into each other as they expanded out. And they've been fighting this war for centuries. In the comic books, the Skrull homeworld was destroyed by Galactus. Now, I know Galactus isn't in the MCU, and yes, you could have played that as, well, during the war, the Kree destroyed the Skrull homeworld. But in the comic books, even after the Kree homeworld was destroyed by Galactus, they still tried to invade Earth. They still tried to take over the Earth. And to portray them as victims of the Kree was just, I'm going to go with stupid. And then, okay, so that part was definitely in conflict with what a comic book person who has read comic books for a long time believes the Marvel comic book universe is canon. It is the actual universe, and everything should be at least somewhat based off of them. Like in the Avengers, the very first Avengers, the way they came together isn't really a version of how they came together in any given time in the comic books. But it felt like the Avengers. It was close to what they called the Ultimate Universe of the Avengers. So it felt like the Avengers. It gave you that flavor, right? And then the Age of Ultron came along. In the comic books, Hank Pym developed Ultron. Well, when they did that movie, he hadn't been introduced as a character yet. But it also made sense that Tony Stark and Bruce Banner basically created Ultron, and the Ultron they created still felt like the Ultron from the comic books that Hank Pym created. So he had the flavor of comic book Ultron, right? And they've done that with a lot of their characters, where they've kind of shrank down and condensed, and even in some cases maybe even combined supporting characters for the MCU, for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But it still works because that guy feels like the character you've read in the comic books. And here there's nothing that feels like the Skrulls. The Kree feel like the Kree from the comic books, but the Skrulls don't feel like the Skrulls. So that in my mind is actually a problem. And then let's take the Tesseract that was introduced in this movie. Well, they just rewrote their own Marvel Cinematic Universe history. The Tesseract was found during World War II by the Red Skull. It had been hidden on Earth in a Norwegian church for centuries. The Red Skull lost the Tesseract as he was flying in his Superjet bomber to bomb New York City in a fight with Captain America. It melted through the floor and fell into the North Atlantic. In the North Atlantic, it was found by Tony Stark. Not Tony Stark, I'm sorry, Howard Stark. It was then locked away